shy waitress brought her daughter to work, but the girl hugged the CEO and called him dad in public. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in the heart of Manhattan, the kind of day when the streets are bustling with busy professionals. Yet there is a calm in the air, a sense that things are about to change. Inside La Belle Poche, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the clink of fine china and the soft hum of quiet conversations filled the space. The sun filtered through the tall windows, casting soft beams of light over the marble floors. Christina Matthews, a young waitress with dark brown hair tied neatly in a ponytail, moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of gourmet dishes with ease. Despite the luxury of the place and the fancy patrons she served, Christina had grown used to blending into the background. She had a job to do, and she did it well, with precision and a quiet dignity that didn't demand attention but often earned respect. Today, however, was different. Today, her 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was with her. Her usual babysitter had fallen ill, and with no other options, Christina had brought Lily to work. She had tried her best to make her daughter comfortable in the back room, handing her some coloring books and snacks to keep her entertained. But Lily, with her wide, curious eyes, was restless, and she kept sneaking out into the main dining area, peeking at the busy world outside. Christina smiled as she caught a glimpse of Lily, her heart swelling with both love and worry. She knew this wasn't the ideal situation, but it was the only choice she had. The restaurant's clientele was used to seeing waitstaff move swiftly and quietly between tables, but today, there was an unusual tension in the air. The Hay Party had just arrived, a group of influential businessmen, led by Alexander Hayes, a well-known CEO who owned several tech companies and was always at the forefront of business discussions. Christina had heard of him, of course. Everyone had. The man was as powerful as he was elusive, a figure whose presence commanded attention without needing to raise his voice. As he walked into the restaurant, his tailored navy suit and expensive watch spoke volumes about his wealth and status. But it was his eyes that captured Christina's attention. They were cold, calculating, the kind of eyes that seemed to assess everything and everyone with a glance. She hurried to the table to greet him, trying to focus on the task at hand. She had learned long ago to ignore the cold stares of customers who looked down on her for her job, for her uniform, for her life. But when she saw Lily slip past the kitchen door and run towards the table, her heart skipped a beat. Before she could stop her, Lily reached the CEO's table and, without hesitation, hugged him tightly around the legs. "Daddy," she exclaimed loudly, as if the man before her was the father she had always imagined. The room fell silent. Christina froze, her face turning pale. The CEO, taken aback, looked down at the little girl, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the quiet whispers of the other patrons filling the space. Christina rushed over, her voice shaking as she tried to explain. "I'm so sorry, she's just confused." But as she spoke, Alexander's gaze fixed on the little girl, and something in his eyes softened, a flicker of recognition. This was no ordinary moment. This was something else entirely. Christina rushed to her daughter's side, her hands shaking as she gently pulled Lily away from Alexander's legs. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes," she stammered, trying to keep her voice steady. "She's just a little confused. She doesn't understand." Lily, oblivious to the tension she'd caused, looked up at Alexander with wide, trusting eyes. "You're my daddy, right?" she asked again, her voice filled with innocence and hope. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the bustling restaurant seemed to fade away. Alexander stood frozen, his gaze locked on the child before him. He didn't speak immediately, and the weight of the moment settled in the room. Christina could feel every pair of eyes in the restaurant on her, judging her for the mistake her daughter had made. "She's just a child," Christina said softly, trying to smooth things over. "She's never met her father." Alexander finally broke the silence, but not with the anger Christina had expected. His expression was a mix of surprise and something else, something Christina couldn't quite place. It's all right, he said quietly, bending down to the child's level. She looks just like someone I knew once. Christina's heart skipped a beat. She had never mentioned her daughter's father to any of the patrons in the restaurant, and she certainly hadn't mentioned him to someone like Alexander Hayes. He was a billionaire, a man whose wealth and power were legendary in the city. She had no idea why he would react this way to her daughter's innocent mistake. Are you all right? Alexander asked Lily, his tone softer than she'd ever imagined a man like him could speak. Lily nodded enthusiastically. I'm good. I'm just looking for my daddy. The innocent joy in her voice made Christina's chest tighten. She pulled Lily close, feeling the warmth of her little body against hers. The conversation had shifted, but the unease lingered. Christina was painfully aware of her uniform, the way she was still trying to balance her life between the work she did and the dreams she had given up on years ago. Alexander stood up slowly, his gaze lingering on the child for a moment longer. I think we should talk, he said, his voice carrying a sense of authority, but not in the way it had before. It was different now, as if something had shifted inside him. Christina didn't know how to react. Her first instinct was to refuse, to walk away and pretend nothing had happened. But something inside her urged her to listen. Maybe it was the way he spoke, or maybe it was the fact that Lily had somehow triggered something in him. I'm sorry, Christina said again, trying to regain some control. I don't think this is appropriate. Alexander shook his head. It's not about what's appropriate. It's about understanding, he said. And right now, I don't think I understand what just happened here. His words were calm, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that made Christina feel exposed. She could tell he wasn't just curious. He was searching for something, trying to piece together a puzzle she wasn't sure she could solve. I'll be right back, he said, his tone softening just a little. He left the table and walked toward the back of the restaurant, disappearing behind a set of heavy curtains. Christina stood frozen, her mind racing. What had just happened? Why had he reacted that way? She didn't know, but she knew she couldn't let her daughter's mistake turn into something more. As she stood there, trying to steady her thoughts, Lily tugged at her sleeve. Is he going to be my daddy? She asked, her voice filled with innocent hope. Christina smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. No, sweetie, she whispered. He's not your daddy. But deep down, something in Christina's heart felt uneasy, as if she had just stumbled into something far bigger than she could understand. She couldn't explain it, but there was something about the way Alexander had reacted that made her wonder if Lily's innocent mistake had opened a door to a part of her past she had long buried. When Alexander returned moments later, he looked different, more serious, more focused. He wasn't the billionaire CEO who had been cold and dismissive moments before. Now, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. I think we need to talk, he said, his voice low. This isn't just about a mistake. I need to know more. Christina stood frozen, her mind racing. She had no idea why Alexander Hayes, an intimidating billionaire CEO, was asking to talk, but the look in his eyes suggested this was not going to be a typical conversation. She glanced down at Lily, who was still holding on to her arm, looking up at Alexander with wide, trusting eyes. Lily, honey, can you go to the back and sit with Pierre for a moment? Mommy needs to talk to Mr. Hayes. Lily hesitated, glancing at Alexander one more time. Okay, Mommy, she said softly, her small voice carrying an innocence Christina wished she could protect forever. As Lily wandered off to the back room, Christina turned back to Alexander, her hands trembling slightly. What's this about? She asked, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Alexander leaned in, his expression more intense now. That girl, Lily, she looks just like someone I knew. Someone I lost. His words struck Christina like a bolt of lightning, and she found herself momentarily speechless. She had never mentioned Lily's father to anyone at the restaurant. How could this man, this stranger, possibly know anything about her past? I don't understand, Christina stammered, trying to make sense of the situation. Who are you talking about? Alexander's jaw tightened, and he glanced around the room as if making sure no one was eavesdropping. I'm talking about my daughter. She went missing years ago in a tragic accident. We were at the park, and she was taken. I never found her. I've spent years searching. And when I saw Lily just now, he trailed off, his voice cracking slightly. She has the same eyes, the same smile. Christina felt a chill run down her spine. This couldn't be happening. She had heard of Alexander Hayes, of course. Everyone in the city had. His name was synonymous with success, power, and ruthless business tactics. He was a man who controlled empires, who didn't take no for an answer. But this was something entirely different. A part of her wanted to dismiss it as some wild coincidence, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. I know this sounds crazy, Alexander continued, his voice softening, but I need to know. Does Lily have any family on her father's side? Anyone who could explain the resemblance? Christina's mind raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had spent years burying the past, protecting herself from the painful memories of the man who had disappeared from her life. The man who had left her with nothing but a broken heart and a daughter to raise alone. The thought of him now, after all these years, felt like a wound reopening. Lily's father is, Christina's voice faltered. She didn't know how to explain it. How could she? How could she explain the pain of losing someone who had once promised her the world? How could she explain the man who had never come back for his daughter, for her? He's not in the picture, Christina finally said, her voice cold, her heart heavy with the weight of her own lies. I raised Lily on my own. There's no one else. Alexander studied her for a long moment, his sharp eyes seeming to pierce right through her. I don't believe you, he said quietly, but not with accusation, more with the weight of someone who had been searching for answers for too long. I know the man I lost, and I know that he wouldn't just leave, not without a reason, not without knowing what happened. Christina's heart pounded in her chest, the old pain threatening to consume her. She wanted to run. She wanted to escape this conversation, to hide from the truth that had been buried for so long. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when everything she had built with Lily was being threatened by this man, who somehow seemed to know too much. I don't know what you're talking about, Christina whispered, her throat tight. There's nothing to find here. Just let it go. Alexander shook his head slowly, as if he didn't believe a word she was saying. You don't get it, do you? I've spent years trying to find her, trying to figure out what happened. And now, I'm standing here looking at the person who might have the answers. I can't let this go, not without knowing the truth. Christina's world tilted on its axis. She had spent years running from her past, building a life where she could keep the pain hidden. But now, here was Alexander Hayes, demanding answers she wasn't ready to give. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I want to know who she is, he said, his voice almost pleading. I want to know if Lily is really my daughter. If she's the one I've been searching for all these years. Christina's breath caught in her throat, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the decision she had to make. Could she trust him? Should she let him into their lives? Her mind screamed for her to run, to protect Lily from the chaos that was about to unfold. But another part of her, the part that still clung to hope, wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was the chance for a new beginning. For Lily to have the father she deserved. But was it worth the risk? Christina stood there, her heart racing as she stared at Alexander. His gaze was intense, but there was something else in his eyes now, something softer, more vulnerable. She could tell he wasn't just a powerful businessman looking for answers anymore. The desperation in his voice had shifted into a quiet plea, as though this moment had taken him back to a place he had buried deep inside himself. She couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him, even though she was still reeling from the shock of everything that had happened in the last few minutes. I understand this is a lot to ask, Alexander said, his voice calm but firm. But I need to know if Lily is truly my daughter. I've been searching for her for years. This could be my last chance. Christina swallowed hard, trying to push the lump in her throat down. She had always thought she had control over her life, over her past. She had learned to keep her emotions buried, to protect Lily from the things that could hurt her. But now, with Alexander standing in front of her, everything felt uncertain. The truth she had hidden for so long was beginning to unravel. I don't know what to say, Christina whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily's father left us. He didn't come back. There's no one else. I'm all she has. Alexander looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. He seemed to be studying her, searching for any sign that would confirm what he had been hoping for. You're telling me that there's no connection between Lily and my daughter? He asked softly, almost as if he were talking to himself. No family ties, no history. Christina closed her eyes for a moment, fighting the tears that were threatening to spill. She didn't know how much longer she could keep this wall up, Every word she spoke felt like another piece of her past being dragged back into the light. "There's no one," she said, her voice cracking. "I raised Lily on my own. That's all there is to it." Alexander didn't respond right away. Instead, he stood silently for a few seconds, as if processing what she had said. Then, with a sigh, he ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I can't just walk away from this," he said quietly, his voice firm with determination. "I've spent years trying to find her, and now I'm standing here, looking at the daughter I thought I'd lost forever. I can't leave without knowing the truth." Christina felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy burden. She had been living with her own truth for so long, hiding it from everyone, even herself. But now she had to decide whether she would let Alexander into her world, into Lily's life. She took a deep breath, her mind spinning with the possibilities of what might happen next. Could she really let him in? Could she trust him with the one thing that meant everything to her? "You can't just force your way into our lives," Christina said, her voice suddenly more assertive. "Lily deserves a life without this chaos. She's been through enough." Alexander nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "I know," he said, his voice softer now. "I don't want to hurt her. I just need to know if she's truly mine. I need to understand why this is all happening." Christina felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. She didn't want to be faced with these decisions. She didn't want to relive the pain of the past. But the truth was, she had no choice. Alexander's persistence was like a tidal wave, and she was standing in its path. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't know what it was like. I had to make a choice between protecting Lily and letting go of everything that was tied to her father. I've spent years rebuilding our lives. You can't just come in and tear it all apart." Alexander took a step closer, his expression softening. "I'm not here to tear anything apart," he said gently. "I'm here to find out if she's really my daughter. If there's a chance to make things right, to fix the mistakes I made." He paused, his voice faltering for a moment. "I can't change the past, but I can try to make it better." Christina stared at him for a long moment, her heart torn between the desire to protect her daughter and the undeniable pull of the truth that had been buried for so long. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. "I don't know what to do," she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. Alexander reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before gently resting on her shoulder. "You don't have to make any decisions right now," he said softly. "But I think we both need to know the truth." The room felt suffocating as the weight of his words settled in. Christina's mind was racing, and her heart was pounding in her chest. She wanted to protect Lily. She wanted to shield her from everything that was unfolding. But she also knew that this was a moment that could change everything. She could feel the walls around her beginning to crack, the pieces of her past slowly coming into focus. But was she ready to face it? Was she ready to let Alexander back into her life, even if it meant risking everything she had worked so hard to build? Christina stood silently, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The quiet tension in the air was thick, each second feeling like an eternity. Alexander's words echoed in her ears, each one pulling her deeper into a reality she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She had spent years shielding Lily from the truth, protecting her from the pain of a broken family. But now, here was Alexander, standing in front of her with a truth of his own, one that could change everything. "I'm not going to push you," Alexander said, his voice calm but firm. "But I need you to understand, Christina, this isn't just about me or my past. It's about Lily. She deserves to know the truth, just like I do." His gaze was intense, and for a moment, Christina felt the weight of his words settle into her chest. She had never imagined that the decision she made years ago, to raise Lily alone, would come to this. She had always thought that the past was behind her, that the life she built with Lily was all that mattered. But now, the past was knocking at her door, and she didn't know how to handle it. "She's just a little girl," Christina said quietly, her voice shaking. "She doesn't need to know about this. She's safe with me. She's never needed anyone else." Alexander's expression softened, but there was still a hint of determination in his eyes. "You're wrong," he said gently. "Lily deserves to know where she comes from. She deserves to understand her family, even if it's complicated." Christina swallowed hard. She had never wanted to open that door. The pain of losing her partner, The man who had promised to be there for her and their child was still raw. She had never expected to face him again, let alone allow him back into their lives. I understand why you're scared, Alexander continued, his voice filled with empathy. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to raise Lily on your own. But I also know that I'm not the enemy here. I'm just trying to understand what happened, to make sure Lily knows the truth. Christina's heart ached as she looked at him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he had tried to hide behind his power and success. For a brief moment, she felt a flicker of hope, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all bad. But the fear still lingered. The fear that letting Alexander into their lives would undo everything she had worked so hard to build. She thought of Lily's innocent face, of the world she had created for her daughter, and the way she had protected her from the lies and the pain of the past. Could she really risk that? Could she let Alexander back into their lives after all these years? What if you're wrong? Christina asked, her voice trembling. What if she's not yours? What if this is all just a mistake? Alexander shook his head, his jaw tightening. I don't think it's a mistake, he said firmly. There's something in the way Lily looked at me, something in the way she said Daddy. I've spent years looking for her, and there's something about this that feels right. I can't ignore it. But I also won't force you into anything. I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. I just want to know the truth. Christina felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had never wanted to be in this position. She had never wanted to face the possibility that the man who had walked out on her and their child all those years ago might actually be a part of their lives again. But deep down, she knew that avoiding the truth wouldn't make it go away. The truth was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. I don't know if I can do this, Christina whispered. I don't know if I'm ready to let you in. Alexander took a step closer, his gaze softening. You don't have to be ready, he said gently. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I just want to help, Christina. I want to be a part of Lily's life if she'll let me. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Christina was frozen. She had spent so long building walls, protecting herself and Lily from the pain of the past. But now, standing in front of her was a man who was offering something she had never thought possible, a chance for her daughter to know the truth, a chance for her to have the father she had always deserved. And yet, the fear still lingered. What happens now? Christina asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander exhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Now, we take it one step at a time, he said quietly. We start by finding out the truth, and then we figure out what comes next. But we do it together. Whatever happens, I'll be here for both of you. Christina felt a shift inside her, a glimmer of hope breaking through the walls she had built. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be difficult decisions ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt like there might be a chance for something more. For her daughter. For her. For both of them. And maybe, just maybe, the truth wouldn't be as terrifying as she had once thought. Christina sat at the small table in the back of La Belle Poche, her hands trembling as she stared at the file in front of her. It had been a few days since the conversation with Alexander, and in that time, everything had changed. The truth about Lily's possible connection to him hung over her like a dark cloud, and no matter how hard she tried to push it out of her mind, it was always there, lurking in the background. Alexander had kept his promise to give her space, but every time they spoke, there was a part of her that felt torn. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, and fears about what the future might hold. Would letting Alexander into their lives truly be the right thing for Lily? Could she trust him after all these years? Christina's thoughts were interrupted when Pierre, the restaurant's head waiter, approached her with a soft smile. Christina, Mr. Hayes is here to see you, he said gently. She nodded, her stomach flipping. Despite her best efforts to keep her emotions in check, she couldn't help but feel a not form in her chest. Alexander had made it clear that he wasn't giving up. He wanted answers, and he wasn't going to back down. Taking a deep breath, Christina stood up and walked toward the front of the restaurant, where Alexander was waiting near the entrance. His presence was unmistakable, the confidence in his posture, the sharp cut of his suit, the way he seemed to command the room without uttering a word. Yet, today, there was something different about him. The cold businessman she had first met was now replaced by a man who appeared vulnerable, almost unsure. Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice steady but with a slight edge. Thank you for waiting. He looked at her, his eyes softening as he took in her expression. I know this has been difficult for you, he said, his voice calm but filled with a sincerity that Christina hadn't expected. I didn't mean to cause you so much stress, but I need to know if Lily is really mine. Christina looked away, her heart heavy. She had spent so much time running from the past, hiding the truth from everyone, including herself, that the idea of confronting it head-on was terrifying. I understand, she whispered, almost too quietly for him to hear. But you have to understand, Alexander. Lily is my whole world. I've protected her from everything, from the pain, from the lies. I don't know if I'm ready to let you in. He stepped closer, his gaze intense but gentle. I'm not asking you to trust me all at once. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to know if she's really my daughter. A chance to make up for everything I've lost. His words hit Christina like a wave, and she took a step back, trying to hold on to the little bit of control she had left. And what happens if she is yours? She asked, her voice trembling. What happens if all of this is true? What are you going to do? Alexander's face softened, and he reached out, his hand brushing against hers in a gesture of reassurance. I'm not here to take her away from you. I don't want to disrupt your life or hers, but I want to be a part of it. I want to be there for her, for both of you. Christina pulled her hand away, suddenly feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice cracking. You don't know what it's like to raise a child on your own, to have to make decisions every single day, not knowing if you're doing the right thing. I've given up everything for Lily. Everything. And now you want to come in and change all of that. Alexander didn't move. He didn't speak, just stood there, letting her words hang in the air. After a long moment of silence, he finally said, I can't change the past, Christina, but I can be here for the future. I can be the father I should have been, if you'll let me. His words broke something inside her, and for the first time since this whole situation had started, Christina felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the disaster she had feared it would be. Maybe this was the chance she needed to let go of the past and let her daughter have the father she deserved. But she still had to protect Lily. She still had to keep her safe from the truth. I need time, Christina said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to figure this out. I need to know what's best for Lily. Alexander nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take all the time you need, he said softly. But know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Christina turned away, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had to make. She had spent so long protecting Lily from the pain of the past, but now, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She had to face the truth, no matter how hard it was. And as much as she wanted to deny it, she knew that Alexander was right. Lily deserved to know the truth. She deserved to know her father. But was she ready to let go of the walls she had built around their lives? Was she ready to let Alexander into their world? The uncertainty was unbearable, but for the first time, Christina felt a small spark of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, everything would work out. Hope that this could be the beginning of a new chapter, one where Lily could have the life she deserved. And in that moment, she made a decision. She would give Alexander a chance to prove he was the father Lily deserved, and a chance for herself to heal from the wounds of the past. The following week, things felt different. The air was heavier, the weight of everything that had happened between Christina and Alexander hanging in the balance. They had agreed to take it one step at a time, but each step felt like a tightrope walk. Christina tried to keep life as normal as possible, but the shadow of Alexander's presence loomed over her, especially when Lily asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. Why do you and Mr. Hayes talk so much, Mommy? Lily had asked a few days ago, her innocent eyes filled with curiosity. Is he going to be my daddy? Christina had to fight the lump that formed in her throat. No, sweetheart, he's just a friend, she had lied, although her heart wasn't sure of that anymore. Every day, it became harder to keep Lily in the bubble she had built for her. The truth was threatening to spill out, and Christina wasn't sure how to stop it. She had agreed to let Alexander spend time with them, to take small steps toward building some kind of relationship, but it didn't make the fear go away. Alexander had been patient, understanding her need for time, but the questions kept coming. Every time she saw him, there was an undercurrent of something more, a longing, an urgency that made her feel like she was running out of time. It wasn't just the truth about Lily that weighed on her. It was everything that had come before. The abandonment, the promises broken, the life she had built alone. She had never imagined her world would collide with Alexander's again, but now that it had, she couldn't ignore it. One evening, after a long shift at the restaurant, Christina found herself sitting alone in the dimly lit back room, her mind running through the same questions over and over. Was she doing the right thing? Could she trust Alexander? And more importantly, could she trust herself? As if on cue, the door to the back room opened, and Alexander stepped inside, his figure framed by the light from the kitchen. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said softly, his voice gentle but filled with an unmistakable sense of urgency. "I just wanted to talk. If you're not too tired." Christina looked up at him, her expression conflicted. "I'm not sure what there is left to say," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "I've told you everything I can. I've opened up, Alexander. But I still don't know where this is going." He nodded slowly, stepping closer but keeping a respectful distance. "I understand that, believe me. But I also know that time is running out. I can't keep pretending that nothing is happening. I can't keep pretending I don't feel a connection to Lily. And I can't keep pretending I don't want to be a part of her life." Christina's heart raced as she heard the sincerity in his words. She had tried to shut him out, tried to keep him at arm's length, but every time he spoke, every time he looked at her with those searching eyes, it felt like she was slowly losing her grip on the world she had built. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what this means. I'm scared of how much you want this, how much you're pushing for it. I don't know if I can give you what you want." Alexander's expression softened, his voice low and steady. "I don't want to push you, Christina. I just want to be here for both of you. I don't expect you to give me anything right now. All I'm asking for is a chance. A chance to prove I'm not going anywhere. A chance to show you I'm serious about being a part of Lily's life." Christina's eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly, not wanting to show weakness. But the emotion was overwhelming. She had spent so long protecting herself and Lily from the harshness of the world, from the truth of their past, and now it felt like everything was slipping away. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can let you into our lives. It's too much." Alexander reached out, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "You don't have to trust me all at once," he said quietly. "But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I want to be there for you, for Lily. I want to be the father she deserves, even if it takes time." Christina closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. It was true. He wasn't going to walk away. He wasn't going to give up on them, on her. And deep down, she knew she couldn't keep running from the truth. The truth that Lily deserved more than what she had been given. The truth that maybe, just maybe, Alexander could be a part of their lives in the way he wanted to be. "Okay," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet resolution. "We'll take it one step at a time. But no promises. I can't promise you anything right now." Alexander nodded, a small but genuine smile forming on his lips. "That's all I ask for. One step at a time." As he turned to leave, Christina watched him go, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had just made. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be simple. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way forward. Together. The following days felt like an emotional roller coaster for Christina. The small steps she and Alexander had agreed on seemed to grow larger with each passing moment. She tried to keep her routine as normal as possible, but the weight of the situation was always there, just beneath the surface. Alexander had kept his word, patiently allowing her the space she needed while showing up for their small meetings, slowly proving that he wasn't just a passing figure in their lives. But every time he looked at Lily, there was a quiet longing in his eyes, a reminder of what had been lost and what he desperately wanted to reclaim. Christina noticed it more than once. The way Alexander would watch Lily when she wasn't looking, the way his eyes softened when she laughed or when she asked him simple questions. Lily, blissfully unaware of the emotional turmoil that had been set into motion, was beginning to grow attached to the idea of a father, something she had never known. It wasn't that Christina didn't want Lily to have that connection. It was just that the possibility of it all was overwhelming. She had spent years building her own version of normal, shielding her daughter from the pain of an absent father, and now she was faced with the idea of bringing him back into their lives. Was she ready for that? was Lily. It was a Sunday afternoon when the call came. Christina was sitting in the small kitchen of their apartment, sipping her coffee, when her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up and saw that it was from Alexander. Her heart skipped a beat. They had been communicating through texts and occasional meetings, but this felt different. Christina, the message began, I know you've been doing your best to process everything, and I want to give you more time. But I can't deny it any longer. I think it's time we take the next step. I'd like to meet with you and Lily, just the three of us, at the park. It's a neutral space, and we can take it slow. But I need to know if we can start building something together. Please let me know what you think. I understand if you need more time, but I think it's the right moment. Christina stared at the message for a long time. She wasn't sure what she felt. Fear, excitement, confusion, but one thing was certain. Alexander wasn't giving up. He was committed, and despite all her hesitation, that truth began to take root in her heart. She had always prided herself on being the one who made the decisions for her and Lily, but now, it felt as though those decisions were slowly slipping away. After a few minutes, she typed a response. I'll meet you at the park at 3. The next day, Christina couldn't shake the nervous energy building inside her. She tried to prepare Lily for the meeting, but how do you prepare a child for something as monumental as meeting a potential father for the first time? Lily, I need you to understand something, Christina said as they got ready to leave. Mr. Hayes is a friend. He's a very important person, and he wants to get to know you, but we're going to take things slow. I want you to be polite, okay? Lily nodded enthusiastically, though Christina could see the confusion in her eyes. Will he be my daddy? She asked, looking up at Christina with those innocent eyes that always made Christina's heart ache. Christina smiled softly, trying to keep her emotions in check. Not yet, sweetie. But he might be someone important in your life. We'll see. The drive to the park felt endless. Christina's mind was spinning with all the what-ifs. What if this wasn't right for Lily? What if she was making a mistake? But as they arrived and Christina parked the car, she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Alexander was already there, standing near the entrance to the park, his dark suit a stark contrast to the laid-back atmosphere of the green space. He looked out of place, but somehow, he still looked at ease, as if he belonged here. When he saw them approach, he straightened up and gave them a small smile. It was a different smile than Christina had seen before. It wasn't the confident, businesslike smile he usually wore. It was softer, more genuine. Hello, Christina, he greeted, his voice warm. Then, turning to Lily, he knelt down, his eyes softening as he looked at her. Hi, Lily. It's so nice to finally meet you. Lily stared at him for a moment, her eyes scanning his face as if trying to make sense of who he was. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and extended her hand, as if mimicking the way adults greeted each other. Hi, she said shyly. Alexander's smile grew as he gently shook her hand. It's so good to meet you, Lily, he said softly. I've heard so much about you. Christina watched the exchange, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. This was the moment she had been both dreading and hoping for. She had never seen Lily interact with someone like this, not the way she was with Alexander. There was a trust there, a spark of recognition that Christina couldn't ignore. Would you like to take a walk with me, Lily? Alexander asked, standing up and gesturing toward the park. I know a great place where we can sit and talk for a while. Lily nodded and grabbed his hand, pulling him eagerly toward the path. Christina followed behind, feeling a strange combination of pride and fear. It wasn't supposed to be this easy, was it? Wasn't this supposed to be more complicated? But as she watched the two of them walk ahead, something inside her shifted. Maybe this wasn't such a mistake after all. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful for them. And for Lily. As they reached a quiet bench by a small pond, Christina took a seat on one side, watching as Alexander and Lily interacted. The natural ease between them was undeniable. For the first time, Christina allowed herself to believe that this was the right thing. It wasn't just about Alexander being Lily's father. It was about the connection they were building, one step at a time, one conversation at a time. It was a chance for a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Christina felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the way forward. As the days passed, Christina found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The meeting at the park had been a turning point, but it hadn't solved anything. The connection between Alexander and Lily was undeniable, and every time they interacted, it became clearer that Alexander had genuine feelings for the little girl. But as much as Christina wanted to embrace the possibility of something better, the scars of the past were difficult to ignore. She had built a life for herself and Lily, and it was one she fought hard to protect. She couldn't just open the door to the past without knowing the full consequences. Every night, she found herself lying awake, wondering if she was making a mistake. Was she opening her daughter's heart to someone who might let her down again? Could she trust Alexander, even after all these years? One afternoon, as Christina sat in the living room folding laundry, Lily came running in, her face bright with excitement. "Mommy, guess what?" she said, jumping up onto the couch beside her. "Mr. Hayes said we can go to the zoo this weekend. Just the three of us." Christina's heart sank. She had been hoping that Alexander would take things slowly, that they could build a connection before introducing Lily to more of his world. But now, it seemed like he was rushing things. "Lily," Christina began carefully, looking at her daughter's excited face. "I don't think we should rush into things. It's important that we take our time. Do you understand?" Lily's excitement faded a little as she looked at her mom. "But I really want to go. He said he's going to take us to see the elephants." Christina's heart wavered at the sound of her daughter's pleading voice. She had been so used to doing everything on her own, making decisions alone, and now she was faced with something that felt out of her control. She had to admit, a part of her was also tempted to take this leap, to let Lily experience something different, something more than what she had known. But was she ready? Was Lily? That evening, Christina and Alexander met for dinner at a small bistro, a place that was quiet and relaxed, away from the tension that had clouded their previous meetings. They had agreed to talk, to try and make sense of everything that was happening between them. When Alexander arrived, he was dressed casually in a dark blue shirt and jeans, a far cry from the tailored suits he usually wore. He looked less like the business mogul everyone knew and more like a man trying to be something else, something real. "I'm glad you agreed to meet me," he said, sitting down across from her. His voice was softer than usual, and he leaned in, his eyes searching hers. "I know it's been a lot, Christina, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About Lily. About you. I'm not going anywhere." Christina nodded slowly, her fingers nervously fidgeting with her napkin. "I just don't want to rush into anything. I don't want to hurt her." Alexander reached out, placing his hand over hers in a reassuring gesture. "I understand, and I respect that, but I also know what I feel, and what I feel is that Lily is a part of me. That connection is real, Christina, and I don't want to lose the chance to build something with her." Christina looked down at his hand on hers, feeling the weight of the moment. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this was a chance for something good, something better for Lily. But the fear, the hesitation, still gnawed at her. "I'm not ready for the zoo," she said quietly, looking up at him. "I don't want to do things too fast. It's too much for her." Alexander's face softened, and he pulled his hand back slowly, giving her the space she needed. "I understand," he said. "I'll give you time, and I'll respect your decision, no matter what. But I want you to know that I'm here for both of you. If you decide that you want to try, we'll take it slow. We'll do it your way." Christina's heart fluttered at his words. This was what she needed to hear. She wasn't ready for the zoo, but maybe, just maybe, she was ready for something else, a chance to open her heart, to let Alexander in, at her own pace. As the dinner continued, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, to small talk about their work, about Lily's school, about anything and everything that wasn't wrapped up in the heavy uncertainty that had clouded their lives. But even in the midst of the conversation, Christina could feel the shift happening between them. She could feel the trust beginning to rebuild, even if it was fragile, even if it was just starting. Later that night, as she tucked Lily into bed, Christina kissed her forehead and sat down beside her. "Mommy, will we go to the zoo with Mr. Hayes?" Lily asked sleepily, her small voice filled with innocent hope. Christina smiled softly, brushing her daughter's hair from her face. "Not yet, sweetheart," she said. "But we'll see what happens, okay?" Lily nodded, her eyes closing as she drifted off to sleep, unaware of the complexities of the world around her. Christina sat there for a while, watching her daughter sleep, her heart filled with love and uncertainty. She had always done everything for Lily, and now, she was faced with the question of whether she was ready to share her heart, to share her daughter with someone else. It was terrifying, But for the first time, Christina felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. A chance for Lily to have the family she deserved. And a chance for Christina to let go of the past and embrace a future filled with possibilities. Christina had hoped that time would make things clearer, but as the weeks went by, the uncertainty only grew. She had let Alexander into their lives, but the space she had given him was starting to feel too small. The moments they shared felt like fragile threads, tenuously woven together, and Christina found herself constantly wondering if they were moving too fast or if they were simply being swept along by the current of fate. She watched as Alexander continued to be patient, as he worked hard to build a bond. With Lily, always taking things slow, never pushing too hard. But no matter how hard she tried to keep her guard up, she couldn't help but notice how happy Lily seemed when she was with him. He made her laugh, made her feel safe. For the first time in a long time, Christina felt the heavy burden of her decisions weigh on her. Could she really hold on to the past, or was it time to embrace a new future? One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Christina and Alexander sat on the porch of her apartment, the cool breeze brushing against their skin. Lily was inside, watching a cartoon, blissfully unaware of the conversations that were unfolding around her. Christina stared at the horizon, her mind still clouded with doubt. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander turned to her, his face softening with understanding. "I know you are," he said quietly. "But you're not alone in this. We don't have to rush. I'm not going anywhere." Christina took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts. The tension in her chest hadn't eased, but hearing Alexander's words made something in her heart loosen just a little. "I never wanted to depend on anyone," she said, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. "I thought I could do it all on my own for Lily. I didn't want anyone coming in and disrupting our lives." Alexander nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I get it. I've always been about control. I built my empire by making decisions, by knowing exactly what was going to happen next. But with you and Lily, I feel like I'm navigating uncharted waters. And that's okay." Christina finally turned to look at him, her gaze meeting his. The sincerity in his eyes caught her off guard. "It's not just about me," she said, her voice growing more resolute. "It's about Lily. I can't let her get hurt. I can't let anyone get close enough to disappoint her again." Alexander smiled softly, his voice steady. "You don't have to worry about that. I've made mistakes, Christina. I know what it feels like to let someone down. But I also know that I won't let her down. I'm here for her, for both of you, no matter what." His words settled in her chest like a warm embrace, and for the first time in a long while, she felt herself breathe a little easier. There was still so much uncertainty, so much fear, but in that moment, she realized that maybe she didn't have to shoulder all of it alone. Maybe she didn't have to do it all by herself. As if sensing the shift, Lily came running out of the apartment, her face lit up with excitement. "Mommy, Mr. Hayes says we're going to the park today," she announced, her voice filled with joy. Christina smiled at her daughter, feeling a wave of warmth spread through her. "That sounds like fun, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft but filled with a new sense of possibility. She had been holding on so tightly to the past, so afraid of letting go, but seeing Lily's smile, seeing the happiness in her eyes, made her realize that maybe it was time to let things unfold. Maybe it was time to see where this path would take them. Later that day, they arrived at the park. Alexander had planned a simple outing, just the three of them. No expectations, no pressure. It was a chance for them to just be, to experience a day together as a family, without all the weight of the past hanging over them. They walked around the park, talking and laughing, enjoying the warm spring air. Lily ran ahead, her laughter echoing through the trees, while Christina and Alexander walked behind, their footsteps falling into sync. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments when the past threatened to resurface, but in that moment, it didn't matter. They were here, together, and that was enough. As the day came to a close, they sat on a bench, watching the sunset together. Lily had fallen asleep in Christina's lap, exhausted from all the excitement, while Alexander sat beside her, his hand resting gently on the back of the bench. "I never imagined this," Christina said quietly, her eyes on Lily. "I never imagined any of this." Alexander looked at her, his expression soft. "Neither did I. But here we are." They sat in silence for a few moments, just watching the sky change colors as the sun dipped below the horizon. For the first time in a long time, Christina felt a sense of peace wash over her. The fear, the uncertainty, the worry, it was all still there, lurking just beneath the surface, but it didn't feel as overwhelming as it once had. Maybe it was because, for the first time, she wasn't alone in carrying the weight of it all. Maybe it was because, for the first time, she was letting herself believe in the possibility of something better. As the night settled in, they stood up and made their way back to the car, hand in hand. Christina's heart felt lighter, and though she knew the road ahead would be difficult, she also knew that, for the first time in a long time, they had a chance. A chance to build something new, to create a future where Lily could have the family she deserved. And as they drove home, Christina glanced at Alexander, a quiet determination settling in her chest. They were taking it one step at a time, but for the first time, it didn't feel like they were moving forward alone. The following week, the bond between Christina, Alexander, and Lily continued to grow, though not without its moments of uncertainty. Each day, they took small steps forward, but the fear of what might happen next always lingered in the background. Christina had allowed Alexander into their lives, but she had yet to let go of the walls she had built to protect herself and Lily. She was still trying to figure out how to balance the life she had created with the possibility of a new future. One evening, after work, Christina found herself at home, alone with her thoughts. Lily had fallen asleep early, exhausted from her day, leaving Christina some quiet moments to think. She sat on the couch, a cup of tea in her hands, her gaze lost in the flickering light of the television, though her mind was 1,000 miles away. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. She knew who it was before she even opened it. Alexander stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Christina hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small apartment, and for a moment, they both stood there, unsure of what to say next. "I've been thinking," Alexander began, his voice steady but carrying a hint of something deeper, something more vulnerable. "I know we're taking things slowly, and I respect that, but I also think it's time to make some decisions." Christina glanced at him, her heart thumping in her chest. "What kind of decisions?" she asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. Alexander took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. "I think it's time we start talking about what comes next. About how we're going to navigate this new chapter in our lives. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Christina swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle over her. She had spent so long living in the past, trying to keep everything as it was, but now, she was being asked to open a door to a future she wasn't sure she was ready for. "What are you asking?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Alexander stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I'm asking if you're willing to let me be a part of Lily's life. I'm asking if you're ready to trust me, even if it's just a little. I know it's scary, but I don't want to wait forever." Christina's breath caught in her throat. The fear that had been building inside her for weeks was now at its peak, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. "I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm ready to let go of the life I've built, to let someone else in, to let you in." Alexander reached out, his hand gently resting on hers. "I don't want to take anything away from you," he said softly. "I'm not asking you to give up everything you've worked for. I'm just asking for a chance to be a part of Lily's life. A chance to show you that I can be the father she deserves." Christina closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to believe in the possibility of something better, something different. But the fear, the uncertainty, was overwhelming. "I don't know if I can take that step," she whispered. "I don't know if I can trust that this is real." Alexander's hand tightened gently around hers, and he took a step closer. "You don't have to take it all at once," he said, his voice filled with understanding. "I'm not asking for everything right now. Just a chance to prove that I can be here for you both." Christina opened her eyes, looking up at him. She saw the sincerity in his face, the vulnerability in his eyes, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she didn't have to face everything alone. Maybe she could allow herself to trust, even if just a little. "Okay," she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty, but also with something else, a willingness to try. "We'll take it slow. But I need to see that you're serious. I need to see that you're not just going to disappear again." Alexander smiled, a genuine smile that made something in Christina's chest loosen. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. "I promise." The next few weeks passed in a blur of small steps forward, each day a little easier than the last. Christina and Alexander continued to meet, talking through their fears and hopes for the future, slowly building a foundation of trust. Alexander spent more time with Lily, getting to know her, showing her the love and care she had been missing for so long. And little by little, Christina allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could have a future together. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the past threatened to creep in and tear apart everything they had built. But for the first time in a long time, Christina felt a sense of peace, a sense of possibility. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. They were moving forward, together. And for Lily, that was enough. As the weeks passed, the tension that had once filled Christina's life began to shift, replaced by something more fragile, but undeniably real. She and Alexander continued to navigate their new reality together, each day presenting new challenges, but also small victories. It wasn't perfect, and they were far from having everything figured out, but for the first time in a long time, Christina felt like they were building something. She watched as Alexander spent more and more time with Lily, slowly earning her trust and affection. Lily had always been a quiet child, protective of her heart, but Alexander's patience was starting to break down her walls. She began to smile more when he was around, asking questions, showing a genuine curiosity about him that Christina hadn't expected. It warmed her heart to see Lily opening up, but at the same time, it reminded her of just how vulnerable they were in this new dynamic. One afternoon, Christina and Alexander decided to take Lily to a nearby museum. It had become one of their regular outings, a way to spend time together without any pressure. As they walked through the exhibits, Christina couldn't help but notice how naturally Alexander interacted with Lily. He wasn't just playing the role of a father. He was genuinely engaged, listening to her stories, answering her questions, encouraging her to explore. For the first time, Christina felt a sense of peace wash over her. Maybe they were on the right path after all. As the day came to a close, and they were walking back to the car, Lily stopped in her tracks, tugging at Christina's hand. "Mommy, I like him," she said, her voice quiet but filled with certainty. Christina's heart skipped a beat. She had been waiting for Lily to say something like this, but hearing it aloud was still a shock. "You like who, sweetie?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lily looked up at Alexander, her eyes wide with trust. "Mr. Hayes," she said simply. Christina's chest tightened, a mix of emotions flooding her. She wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified. It was one thing for Alexander to be involved in their lives, but it was another for Lily to start forming real attachments. She had always tried to protect Lily from the pain of abandonment, but now she was being asked to trust, to believe that this man, this stranger from her past, could be a part of their future. Alexander looked down at Lily, his expression softening as he crouched down to her level. "I'm glad you like me," he said gently, his voice full of warmth. "I like you too, Lily. I'm glad we're spending time together." Christina watched the exchange, her heart torn between the growing hope that this could work and the fear that it might all come crashing down. She knew that they weren't there yet, that there were still many hurdles to overcome, but she couldn't help but feel a flicker of something deep within her, something that felt like hope. That night, after they put Lily to bed, Christina and Alexander sat together in the living room, the silence between them comfortable but heavy with unspoken words. "She's starting to like you," Christina said quietly, her gaze fixed on the empty coffee cup in her hands. "That's a good thing, right?" Alexander nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "It's a good thing," he said softly. "But I'm not rushing this, Christina. I know it's a lot, and I know it's not easy for you. But I want to be here. For both of you." Christina looked up at him, her heart racing. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability that he tried to hide behind his confident demeanor. He wasn't just doing this for the sake of a relationship. He was doing it because he truly cared. "I'm trying, Alexander," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm trying to trust you. But it's hard. I've been doing this alone for so long, and I don't know if I can let someone else in." Alexander reached out, his hand gently brushing against hers. You don't have to do it all at once, he said quietly. I'm not asking for everything, Christina. I just want a chance. A chance to be a part of your lives. To show you that I'm not going anywhere. The sincerity in his words hit her like a wave, and for the first time, she let herself believe him. She had spent so long guarding her heart, keeping her distance from everyone, afraid that if she let anyone in, they would leave. But maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for, a chance to build something new, to create a future where she and Lily didn't have to be alone anymore. Okay, Christina said softly, her voice filled with both uncertainty and hope. We'll take it slow, but I need to know that you're really here, that this isn't just some passing phase. Alexander smiled, his eyes softening. I'm here, Christina. I'm here for you and Lily, for as long as you'll have me. Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to change. Christina allowed herself to trust Alexander more, to let him be a part of their lives in ways she had never imagined. She watched as he continued to bond with Lily, teaching her new things, sharing stories, and simply being there when she needed him. For the first time in a long time, Christina felt like they were moving in the right direction. She wasn't sure where this path would lead them, but she knew that it was a journey they had to take together. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future, one where they could be a family, not just by blood, but by choice, by love. Months passed, and with each day, the bond between Christina, Alexander, and Lily grew stronger. The uncertainties and fears that had plagued Christina began to fade as she watched the three of them navigate their new life together. They were not the perfect family, but they were real, and they were building something that felt like home. Christina had learned to let go of the walls she had spent years building around her heart. She no longer carried the weight of the past on her shoulders, not in the same way. Alexander had shown her that it was okay to trust again, to let love into their lives, even if it was scary. One Saturday afternoon, as they sat in the park together, watching Lily chase after a soccer ball, Christina couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. It had been a long road, and there were still moments of doubt, but in this moment, everything felt right. She glanced at Alexander, who was sitting beside her, his eyes focused on Lily with a look of pride and tenderness that she had never thought she'd see on his face. He had become more than just a figure from her past. He had become someone who was here for them, fully present, not just as a father to Lily, but as a partner to Christina. The weight that had once felt so heavy was now shared between them. They had built this together. She's really starting to trust you, Christina said quietly, her voice filled with a quiet admiration. Alexander turned to her, his expression softening. It's because of you, he replied. You gave me a chance, and you trusted me to be a part of your life. I can't thank you enough for that. Christina smiled, the tension in her chest finally easing. I wasn't sure if I could, but you showed me that I didn't have to do this alone. Alexander's hand found hers, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. You never had to do it alone, he said, his voice full of conviction. I've always been here, and I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, Christina let herself believe him fully. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. They had created something beautiful together. She glanced over at Lily, who had stopped running and was sitting on the grass, her face bright with happiness. This was the life they were building, a life filled with laughter, love, and hope for the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. That night, after dinner, Christina and Alexander sat on the couch, their hands entwined, as they watched Lily play with her toys on the floor. It was a quiet, ordinary evening, but it was the kind of evening that Christina had once thought was impossible. She had spent so much of her life trying to protect herself and Lily from the hurt of the past, but now, she realized that it wasn't about avoiding the pain. It was about embracing the possibility of healing, of starting anew. I'm glad you're here, Christina said softly, looking at Alexander. He turned to her, his eyes warm. I'm glad I'm here too, he replied. And I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in a long time, Christina believed him. She believed in the future they could build together. The next morning, they went for a walk in the neighborhood, hand in hand, just the three of them. It felt like a simple thing, but to Christina, it was everything. They were a family, whether by blood or by choice, it didn't matter. They had found their way to each other, and they were stronger for it. As they walked, Lily skipped ahead, laughing, her joy filling the air. Alexander and Christina shared a look, a quiet understanding passing between them. There would be challenges ahead, of course. There would be moments of doubt and fear, but they would face them together. That was something they could count on. You know, I never imagined this, Christina said, breaking the silence. Alexander glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. What do you mean, he asked. I never imagined being here, in this moment. With you, with Lily, she said, her voice soft but steady. I always thought I had to do it on my own. But now I see that we're stronger together. Alexander smiled, his eyes softening. We are, he said quietly. And we'll keep building, step by step. As they continued their walk, Christina felt a sense of calm settle over her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. She didn't have to carry the burden of her past anymore. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt full of possibility. She had opened her heart, and in doing so, she had allowed herself to dream again. And as they walked through the quiet streets, with Lily's laughter echoing in the distance, Christina knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. She had found her family, not in the way she had expected, but in a way that was even more beautiful than she could have imagined. This touching story follows the journey of Christina, a single mother, as she navigates the complexities of opening her heart to a man from her past. With the arrival of Alexander, a man who may be the father of her daughter, Christina is forced to confront the fear, uncertainty, and hope that come with trusting someone again. As they take small steps toward building a future together, their lives are changed in unexpected ways. This touching story shows how family is not just defined by blood, but by the bonds we create and the people we choose to trust. Filled with moments of joy, pain, and healing, this touching story will remind you that sometimes, the most powerful connections are the ones we least expect. In the face of doubt and fear, Christina and Alexander discover the power of love, patience, and forgiveness. Watch as their journey unfolds, proving that even the most difficult situations can lead to beautiful, touching stories that inspire hope for the future.